Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today we are going to analyze the Hindu dated 1st of November 2019. Displayed on the screen is a list of articles that we are going to discuss today. Timestamping for the same has been provided in the description of the video. Let's begin. We have taken this article from page number 10 of today's newspaper and it talks about substance across the Arabian Sea. Now, this article is related to recent India Saudi Arabia meeting which took place in Riyadh. Now, as far as this topic is concerned, this is important more from the perspective of the mains examination and it will come under General Studies paper 2. The subject will be international relation and the sub-subject would be bilateral, regional and global grouping and agreement involving India and or affecting India's interest. Now before jumping into the analysis of this article, let's first understand India's policy towards West Asia. Now we have seen that India's policy towards West Asia has changed considerably, especially before the Cold War and after the Cold War. At the same time, it is important to understand that India's foreign policy has been cordial towards most of the Gulf countries of the West Asia. Now, we need to understand why India has tried to maintain cordial relations. The reasons are actually very easy to understand. First and foremost, we know that India requires energy security to fuel its industry as well as defense. Now, West Asia is the largest source of oil and natural gas for India, and hence India has always tried to maintain good relationship with the region per se. Second important reason is that a significant chunk of Indian population is employed in these countries and they send back remittances to their home. And this is a very important aspect for India as such. Third and again very important, trade and investment, which is not only related to energy security but for other aspects of trade as well. India is looking forward for furthering trade ties with the West Asian countries. At the same time, in the recently concluded summit between India and Saudi Arabia, trade and investment took precedence over everything else. Last but not the least is management of sentiment. We know that India is home to the second largest Muslim population in the world, and maintaining cordial relationship with West Asia has helped India to manage sentiment of the Indian population as well. So these are the reasons why India has maintained a positive foreign policy towards West Asian countries. Now it is also very important to understand India's recent policy initiative, which is Look West or Link West. Now when we talk about Look West or Link West policy, we need to understand that the policy was brought under Manmohan Singh, especially after the first term of UPA. But at the same time, during this period, UPA government did not attempt much to reach out to the countries of West Asia. So the effort was initiated, but it could not bore any kind of fruits. However, after 2008, Manmohan Singh government took active interest in Look West policy as they wanted to create a platform similar to what we have seen in ASEAN. Such kind of platform was missing for West Asia and hence the government took steps in this direction under the policy head of Look West. When Prime Minister Modi became the head of the government in 2014, he continued with the idea of Look West and recently he has renamed it as Link West policy. So India is trying to balance its relationship with its Southeast Asian neighbors as well as West Asia under two different policy regimes. One is Look East and the second is Link West policy. Now in order to understand the Link West policy, we need to understand the important stakeholders in this issue. Now, when we talk about Link West policy, we need to understand about three major stakeholders. These stakeholders are Israel, Iran, and other Arab Gulf countries. Now, if we understand the important role of these countries, then we can understand the Link West policy in a better perspective. Now, first, let's start our relationship, the relationship between India and Israel. Now, the relationship between these two countries is divided into two phases. First, during Cold War and second, after Cold War. Now, as far as India's approach during Cold War is concerned, India always tried to stand by Arab world and with the cause of Palestinian people. Again, it is important here to understand that domestic reasons were the cause of India's policy towards Israel. However, things improved considerably after the Cold War. Once the Cold War was over and during the 1990s, India observed many changes in the region, and these included first, dialogues between Israel and many other Gulf countries were initiated. Second important aspect was Israel and Palestine initiated peace process in accordance to Oslo Agreement. And this actually changed India's approach towards Israel. Another very significant aspect from this phase was in 1999 when India was facing Kargil crisis, US tried to impose arm embargo against India. During this phase in 1999, Israel stepped in and became a key supplier. This changed India's perspective towards Israel, and over a period of time, India moved on from being a key arms supplier to a supplier or a provider of high technology and other trade and business related aspects. So in this fashion, we can see that how relationship of India with Israel has matured over a period of time. Now let's take up Iran. Now, as far as the relationship between India and Iran are concerned, these can be divided into two major factors. First is key energy supply, and second is strategic interest in the Central and South Asia. Now, as already mentioned, India requires oil and natural gas to fuel its industry, and hence Iran has been a major supplier for India. However, in the recent past, after the imposition of restriction by the US, the trade between India and Iran for oil and natural gas has come down. Second important aspect is strategic interest in the Central and South Asia. Now, it is important for India to contain Pakistan, especially in the case of Afghanistan. For both Iran and India, the path of constraining Pakistan lies through Afghanistan, which has become the base for militant groups whose threats transcend the country's borders, which include India as well. Now, India and Iran first agreed to cooperate on the field of development, of trade and transport through Central Asia. Development of Chabahar port is an important milestone for furthering India and Iran relationship and to ensure easy access to Afghanistan. Moreover, it has also ensured easy import of oil and gas to India, and it has also acted as a counterweight to Chinese influence in the region. In more clear terms, Chabahar offers an alternative to China's own efforts to extend influence in the region, including through its own efforts at improving the port of Gwadar on the Pakistan side of the border. Now we need to understand what can be the possible constraint to the Link West policy as started by India. First and foremost, relationship with Israel. Now we already know that relationship of Israel with the neighboring Gulf nations is improving. However, at the same time, these relationships have been dicey as well. Israel is yet to settle the issue with Palestine and other countries of the neighboring area. And hence, when India has already committed too much with Israel, it can be one of the possible constraints in the time to come. Second important aspect is there is a limited impact of Chabahar port to contain Pakistan and China. It is well known that China has already spent around US dollars 68 billion on its China Pakistan economic corridor, and hence Chabahar port will have a limited impact in derailing or containing Pakistan and China's influence in the region. It is also important to understand that the influence of other players in the region, like the US, has also acted as a constraint for Link West policy. US over a period of time has implemented many sanctions on Iran, especially about nuclear program, and in light of India's strategic interest, this can also act as a possible constraint for the Link West policy. Last but not the least is the US Iran disputes. Now we know that the work of Chabahar port was also caused by US sanctions on Iran, and hence the dispute between US and Iran, which does not show any signs of abatement and is likely to continue, can also act as a possible constraint to Link West policy. Now we have understood the Link West policy. Now let's focus on the third aspect of Link West policy, and we are talking about Gulf states. In this context, the author has written the article about India and Saudi Arabia. Now, as far as these relationships are concerned, we have divided them into categories. First and foremost, we'll be handling the diplomatic relations. Now, recently, Saudi Arabia has been in news for all the wrong reasons, considering the case of Jamal Khashoggi. Saudi Arabia wants to put across an image of a progressive nation, and hence it is reaching out in its diplomatic effort to the countries to improve its image, which took a dent after the Jamal Khashoggi case. Now, in this case, in the diplomatic aspect, both the countries have accepted the core interest of their respective nations. Saudi Arabia has accepted that abrogation of Article 370 for Jammu and Kashmir is an internal matter of India. Similarly, India has strongly condemned various attacks which were caused on the Saudi civilian facilities. The nutshell of these diplomatic exercise was to improve bilateral defense, security, and improve anti-terror cooperation, which has been a defining point for both the countries. Second important aspect is trade and investment related measures. Now, as far as India is concerned, India has been importing oil majorly from Saudi Arabia. Now, since India is importing its major oil requirement for Saudi Arabia, the bilateral trade stands at around $22.5 billion. However, this has fallen by 9.2% because of fall in the crude prices. Now, the important aspect is when we talk about bilateral trade, the ratio of Saudi Arabia and India is 5:1. It means India's share in bilateral trade is very less. Saudi Arabia gets 5 units and India gets only 1 unit. And hence, measures will be taken to increase bilateral trade between the nations. Another important aspect is that Saudi Arabia has already committed that it will Another important aspect is that the Saudi Arabia has already committed that it will invest US dollar 100 billion in India. Now, if we see in current scheme, right now the FDI from Saudi Arabia is very low, which is US dollar 229 million. Now, in order to improve trade and investment relation with India, Saudi Arabia has released Kingdom Vision of 2030, in which they have specifically planned to improve trade relations with 8 countries, in which India is also a part. Recently, Saudi company Aramco has invested in Indian oil company Reliance, and it is expected that this trade and investment will increase further in the future. Now, both the countries have also agreed to set up a bilateral council. Now, this bilateral council will be called as Strategic Partnership Council, and it will be headed by Indian Prime Minister and Saudi Crown Prince. Since the leader of both the countries will participate in the Strategic Partnership Council, it will actually ensure fast decision making process for both the countries. It has also been accepted that through this Strategic Partnership Council, investment will be made on a bilateral basis for Indian infrastructure, agriculture, startup, skilling, and IT. Now, it is important to understand that if we talk about ease of doing business, both the countries, India and Saudi Arabia, have improved. Saudi Arabia stands at rank 63 and India's rank is 64. So, it is expected that through this Strategic Partnership Council, the investment will be made and both the countries will mutually benefit from this effort. Apart from that, Saudi Arabia has also decided to shift labor intensive industry to India. This will actually boost Make in India as well. It is also important to understand that a Strategic Partnership Council will be a permanent platform with 2 verticals jointly serviced by 2 foreign and trade and industry ministries. So we need to see the relationship between India and Saudi Arabia as part of Link West policy. Now, it must be clear to you that Link West policy is the important policy for India, where India is trying to find a platform similar to what we have seen in the ASEAN. Now, India is negotiating with respective Gulf countries and try to build relationship with them. Now, let's move to the next article. We have taken this news from page number 9, and it talks about sex ratio improves in country, birth and death rate dip. Now, as far as this news is concerned, this is important from the perspective of prelims as well as mains examination. At the same time, in the mains examination, it is relevant from the purpose of GS paper 2 under social justice. As a subtopic, it will be covered under issues related to development and management of social sector, services relating to health, education, and human resources. Now, the title of the article portrays a very good picture which says sex ratio improves in country, birth and death rate dip. But at the same time, there are more information that we need to understand which state the areas where we need to work. Now, the Central Bureau of Health Intelligence has released the latest National Health Profile of 2019. Now, as far as this profiling is concerned, it is done on the basis of multiple areas. Now, when we talk about areas, we need to focus on demographic indicators, which include life expectancy at birth, child population from the age of 0 to 5, crude birth and death rate, fertility. It also includes urban population. So these parameters were covered when we are talking about demographic indicators. Similarly, we need to talk about socio-economic indicators, which is actually very wide. As far as these indicators are concerned, it covered gender, education, poverty, housing amenities, employment, and other economic parameters. Next is health status indicators, which basically reflect the level of malnutrition and deficiency in the population. Fourth important factor is human resources indicators, which basically talks about the presence of trained staff or human resources to address health issues. Health financing is the next important factor, and when we talk about health financing in India, we need to pay attention to insurance as well. Most of the people in India do not go for health insurance and they have to make out of pocket expenditure to ensure health services for themselves. Last but not the least is health infrastructure, which includes presence of hospitals, medicine, and other related infrastructure that a person may need in case of an emergency. So, as far as this National Health Profile 2019 is concerned, the report is prepared on the basis of these six broad categories. Now, let's take a stock of health status indicators as published by the National Health Profile. Now, one of the important findings of this profiling is that India is making a epidemiological transition. In simple words, India is making a transition from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases. And this is reflected in the data which is published in this profiling. Now, we have divided this data into two separate parts. One is non-communicable disease and second is communicable disease. Now, as far as non-communicable diseases are concerned, these include diabetes, heart problem, or hypertension. The idea is to put this into a category which cannot make physical transfer from one to another. As already mentioned, non-communicable diseases are dominating over communicable one in the total disease burden of the country. Now, the disease burden of non-communicable disease has increased from 30% to 55% in the last 26 years. At the same time, mortality rate is close to 62% in the case of these non-communicable disease. Heart disease is the leading cause of deaths and it is closely followed by cancer. Type 2 diabetes is India's fastest growing disease and in 2017 it infected 73 million people in India. Mortality due to diabetes is very high and around 2.5 lakh people lost their life because of diabetes. Hypertension causes 10.8% of deaths in India, and India also faces high burden of lung disease with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It is reported that over 1 million people lose their life every year due to this. Now there are many communicable diseases as well which actually are causing a lot of problem. Acute respiratory infection is the leading communicable disease causing morbidity and it is closely followed by acute diarrheal disease, typhoid, tuberculosis, pneumonia and malaria. Please remember we have talked about infection At the same time, leading cause of mortality from communicable disease goes to pneumonia and is followed by acute respiratory infection. Now let us highlight some of the concerns as mentioned in the report. First and foremost, India suffers from the problem of low spending on health. Now, as far as low spending on health is concerned, India allocates only 1.28% of the GDP on health, which is very low in comparison to other developed and developing countries. If we look from the perspective of per capita expenditure, then this per capita expenditure is around 1657 in 2017 and 18. In dollar terms, it is actually very low. In dollar terms, India spends only $16 when the US spends $8,078, Norway 6,366, and Sweden 4,769. So, in this way, you can see that the spending on health is very low as highlighted in this profile as well. Now, the second important aspect is high out of pocket expenditure. Now, we have already seen that many developed and developing countries spend much more than India, and hence, a lot of expense has to be borne by the individual himself in the case of India. WHO's health financing profile of 2017 clearly shows that in India, 67.78% of total expenditure on health was paid out of pocket. The world average is only 18.2%. Another problem that contributes to high out of pocket expenditure is low insurance penetration. Only 37% of Indian population is covered under health insurance. And it is important to understand that 78% of this 37% is covered by public insurer. Last but not the least is low doctor patient ratio. WHO mandates that the doctor patient ratio should be 1 is to 1000. It means in a population of 1000, there should be at least one doctor. However, in the case of India, the ratio is 1 is to 1596. The problem that increases in India is that the concentration of doctors is more in urban areas. They are not uniformly distributed, and hence health facilities for 60 to 65% population are very limited. These are some of the findings of the National Health Profile. You should keep all this information handy for revision, and you should use this information for prelims as well as for mains examination. Let's move to the next news. Now, we have taken this news from page number 1, and it talks about core sector output falls 5.2% in September. Now, as far as this news is concerned, this is important from the perspective of mains as well as prelims. In mains, it will come under General Studies Paper 3 under Economic Development. As a subtopic, it will be covered under Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development, and employment. Now, in previous years, we have seen many questions on index of industrial production, and hence it is an important topic that we should cover now. Now, as far as the index of industrial production is concerned, it has two parts. One is 8 core industries and the other is non-core industries. Now, index of industrial production is prepared by National Statistical Office, which was earlier called as CSO. It comes under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. At the same time, we need to pay attention to the fact that index of these 8 core industries is made by Economic Advisors Office. This comes under Ministry of Commerce. Now, it means there are two separate indices. First is for 8 core industries and other is the collective one, which is index of industrial production. And there are different agencies responsible for making the index. Kindly keep this thing in mind so that you can use it in the examination. Now, as far as these 8 core industries are concerned, the collective weight of these 8 core industries in the total index of industrial production is around 40.27%. Now, if we consider this 40.27% as 100 units, then the weight of coal would be 10.33%. According to the article published in the newspaper, the coal sector has shrunk the most and it has shown the growth of minus 20.5%. The total weight of crude oil production. Now the total weight of crude oil is 8.98% and it has fell by minus 5.4% as mentioned in the newspaper. Similarly, the total weight of natural gas is 6.88% and it fell by minus 4.9%. Refinery production, which relates to petroleum, has the highest weight of 28.04% and it has also fallen by minus 6.7%. Fertilizer, which has a weight of 2.63%, has shown positive growth and it has actually increased by 5.4%. Steel has the weight of 17.92% and it has shrunk by minus 0.3%. Cement 5.37% is the weight in the total 8 core industries and it has shrunk by minus 2.1%. Similarly, electricity, which has a weight of 19.85%, has shrunk by minus 3.7%. In the previous years, UPSC has also asked about the weight of these 8 core industries and hence weights are mentioned clearly here. Please try to understand that the total weight of these 8 core industries is definitely 40.27%, but we are considering this as a total of 100 units and we have divided this accordingly, and this is how the index has been prepared. Now we need to understand what is the outcome of this report or what we can interpret from this news. First and foremost, such low growth was not witnessed in last 14 years. So this is something which is very significant and we should pay attention to this thing immediately. Second important aspect is that India is facing economic slowdown and it is affecting all the sectors of Indian economy. So we need to take preventive action to come out of this situation. Now one of the suggested measures would be RBI will be forced to reduce some of the policy rates. Now the policy rates will be reduced so that we can boost consumption and counter the economic slowdown. The second important aspect is to increase the investment expenditure in the industry. Through this, in long term, now as far as this news of core industry is concerned, this was also covered by Mahak ma'am on 1st of May 2019. For more understanding of this topic, please refer to the video. Now we have taken this article from page number 8 and it talks about Hyderabad figures in UNESCO list. Now it has been selected as a creative city in the category of gastronomy. Now as far as this topic is concerned, it will be part of Indian history and culture and is important from the perspective of the prelims examination. Now 31st of October is celebrated as World Cities Day by UNESCO. Now in this year, 66 cities were added to UNESCO's network of creative cities. It is important to highlight that this system of celebrating World Cities Days started from 2004 in order to promote cooperation with and among cities that have identified creativity as a strategic factor. This is also brought in line with Sustainable Development Goals. Now, since we are talking about World Cities Day, these cities participated in sustainable urban development. The cities are broadly selected in 7 broad categories. First is craft and folk art, second is media arts, third is film, fourth is design, fifth is gastronomy, sixth is literature, and seventh is music. Now, as far as the news is concerned, it clearly mentions Hyderabad has been chosen for gastronomy. Similarly, Mumbai is also chosen for the film category. Once these cities join the network, they share their best practices and develop partnerships which involve public as well as private sector. This network also includes civil society and tries to create sustainable development goals. This initiative aims at pushing sustainable development goals through innovative thinking and action. Now, as already mentioned, this practice started way back in 2004, and there are many cities from India which are included in the list. Chennai and Varanasi are UNESCO cities of music, and Jaipur is UNESCO city of crafts and folk art. Please keep in mind that this topic is important more from the perspective of prelims examination. Try to remember the categories under which these cities are selected. And second important aspect is the previous cities which are part of this network of creative cities. Now we have taken this article from page number 8, and this article talks about Cyclone Maha batters Lakshadweep and Kerala coast. Now on 29th of October, Mahak ma'am has already covered this topic in detail. However, some of our followers wanted to know about how these cyclones are being named. So today we are going to explain the mechanism of naming the cyclones. For all those who wanted to know more about the cyclone, please refer to the video that was published on 29th of October 2019. Now let us understand how cyclones are named. Now first thing that we should note that earlier there was no tradition to name cyclones, especially in North Indian Ocean. Naming of cyclone was widely practiced by the US. However, in 2000, World Meteorological Organization, Economic and Social Commission for Asia, and Pacific Panel on the Tropical Cyclone met for its 27th summit, and they agreed upon to assign names to the tropical cyclones in the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. Now, although the decision was taken in the year 2000, the practice started in 2004 only. Now, there are 8 countries along the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal which suggest the name of cyclones. These are presented in alphabetical order, and hence, first country is Bangladesh, second is India, third is Maldives, fourth is Myanmar, fifth is Oman, sixth is Pakistan, seventh is Sri Lanka, and eighth is Thailand. Now, these countries take turn in an alphabetical fashion and name the cyclones. There is the Regional Specialized Meteorological Center, or RSMC. There is the Regional Specialized Meteorological Center, RSMC, which actually identifies the tropical cyclones which emerge over Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea and identifies them for naming. The identification system covers both the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. Now, India over a period of time has suggested the name of some of the cyclones. These were Agni, Jali, Bijli, Akash, etc. Mala, Helen, and Nilofar were named by Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan respectively. These lists are used sequentially and they are not rotated every few years, unlike what we have seen in Atlantic and Eastern Pacific lists. Now, based on today's discussion, let's take up practice questions. Question number 1, it says, which of the following Indian cities have been included in the UNESCO network of creative cities? So we know that Mumbai is part of it, Hyderabad is part of it, Jaipur and Chennai is part of it, but New Delhi is not. So we'll choose an option which does not have statement 3. Now, if we just look for that, the correct answer is option D. Second question. Consider the following statements related to index of 8 core industries. This index is calculated by National Statistical Office under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Second statement is 8 core industries constitute more than 50% of the total index of industrial production. We know this is definitely incorrect. Second is petroleum refinery product has been assigned the highest weightage under the index of core industries. Now this is definitely correct. Now we'll choose an option in which 2 is not the part but 3 is. So we can remove option B, we can remove option D, and we know that 3 is definitely correct and hence option A is also incorrect. So the correct answer is option C. With this, we have come to the end of today's session. Let's move to the question of the day.